Have you ever noticed how betrayal never starts loud? It starts quiet. A few late nights. A few small lies. A change in tone when they say your name. And before you even realize it, the person you loved the most is sitting across from you, a stranger, pretending you don't matter anymore. I had to tell this one, because life doesn't always play fair. And sometimes the people who break you end up teaching you how strong you really are. This story isn't just about a marriage falling apart. It's about power, pride, and what happens when the woman they thought was weak stops playing nice. If you've ever been lied to, cheated on, or taken for granted, you're going to feel this one deep. And if you want to know how it all unfolds, or maybe if you've ever lived through something like this, subscribe. Stay tuned. Because this one's personal. Marcus Bennett sat at the long mahogany table, legs crossed, confidence leaking from every inch of his smile. Beside him, Stephanie flipped her sleek blonde hair, tapping her manicured nails on the table in rhythm with his smugness. Across from them, Denise sat still, a plain notepad in front of her, a glass of water untouched, her hands folded neatly on the table. The judge sat at the far end, glasses perched low, already tired of the tension that thickened the air. "All right," the judge began, voice measured. "We're here to finalize property and settlement terms. Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett, I trust we can keep this civil." Denise didn't respond. Marcus leaned back with an easy laugh. "Of course, Your Honor. We're just here to make things official. No need to drag this out." Stephanie, his girlfriend, smiled, resting a hand on his arm. "We all just want what's fair," she added sweetly. Denise's gaze flicked up at the word, fair. Her eyes locked briefly with Stephanie's. It wasn't anger, it was something colder. Something that made Stephanie shift in her seat without knowing why. The judge shuffled papers. According to the initial proposal, Mr. Bennett retains the primary residence, business holdings, and joint investments. Mrs. Bennett receives alimony for minimal alimony, Marcus cut in, flashing the same grin that once charmed Denise 12 years ago. She's capable of taking care of herself. Denise's expression didn't change. "I took care of both of us for 12 years, she said quietly. Stephanie let out a small laugh, sharp and deliberate. "Oh, come on! Marcus built everything from scratch. You should be proud." Denise turned her head slowly, studying her. "Proud," she echoed, her tone soft but dangerous. "Tell me, Stephanie, were you there when he couldn't afford dinner? When I sold my car to fund his first client presentation? When I stayed up all night typing business plans he couldn't spell check?" The judge cleared his throat. "Mrs. Bennett." Denise stopped, but the silence she left behind made Marcus squirm. He forced a smirk. "We all make sacrifices, Denise. That's marriage." "And betrayal," she said, voice flat. Stephanie's face stiffened. "You don't need to get dramatic," she said lightly. "We're just trying to move forward." Denise's eyes softened, almost pitying. "Forward is a strange word, considering how much of my past you've been wearing lately." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Denise, don't start." She didn't look at him. "That necklace you're wearing," she said to Stephanie. "He bought that for me on our anniversary trip to Napa. It was on my dresser for years until the day I found it missing." Stephanie's hand instinctively rose to her neck. The judge sighed, tapping the table. "Let's stay focused, please." Denise nodded. "Of course, Your Honor. Let's focus on assets." Marcus straightened, seizing control again. "Right. My company, Bennett Consulting, is a non-marital property. It was founded solely under my name." Denise tilted her head. "Really? And the $50,000 seed money, where did that come from?" Marcus froze for half a second. "Savings?" he said. "Mine?" Denise corrected gently. Stephanie rolled her eyes. "This is petty." "No," Denise said calmly. This is accurate. The judge leaned forward. Do you have documentation of that contribution, Mrs. Bennett? Denise slid a small folder across the table, neatly labeled and tabbed. Bank, transfer, receipts, dates, and amounts, including the interest he promised to repay, which he never did. Marcus's hand twitched. He didn't expect Denise to fight back, but he forced another smile. Your Honor, this isn't about who paid what over a decade ago. The company's value now far exceeds that initial amount. Denise's lips curved just slightly. That's true, and I helped build it every step of the way, Stephanie scoffed. Typing invoices doesn't make you a partner. Denise finally looked at her, and for a moment the room felt smaller. You wouldn't last a day in the version of him I knew, she said quietly. When success smelled like instant noodles and unpaid rent, when he promised me the world if I just believed in him. The judge raised a brow. Mr. Bennett, did Mrs. Bennett ever hold an official role in the company? Marcus opened his mouth, but Denise interrupted calm, precise. Co-signer on the original business loan, listed as guarantor on the first office lease, and primary holder on our joint account, which funded the first year of operations. The judge's pen paused mid-note. Stephanie blinked. That can't be true. Denise's eyes didn't move. You should really read the things you sign, Stephanie. Marcus's composure cracked. She's exaggerating. Your Honor, this Mr. Bennett, the judge cut in sharply. I'll need to verify these claims, if substantiated, Mrs. Bennett may have legal entitlement to a percentage of business equity. Stephanie turned to Marcus, whispering harshly. You said she had nothing. Denise leaned back in her chair, calm, almost serene. He says that about everyone. Marcus clenched his jaw, shooting her a glare. You're not getting a cent more than what's written in the draft agreement. Denise smiled faintly. I'm not here for cents. The judge looked between them, adjusting his glasses. Let's proceed with the financial disclosures. Mr. Bennett, please provide your account summaries. Marcus hesitated, flipping through his folder. Denise watched every move, silent and steady. Stephanie glanced nervously as Marcus passed a few sheets forward. Denise spoke softly. Is that all of them? Marcus didn't look up. Yes. Her tone didn't change. Strange. Because the mortgage statement I received last month mentioned a home equity line of credit I never signed. Marcus froze. Stephanie's breath hitched. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is that accurate? Marcus cleared his throat. A simple refinancing, nothing hidden. Denise's gaze didn't waver. Then you won't mind showing the documentation? Stephanie shifted in her seat, whispering. Marcus. The judge sighed. We'll take a short recess. Mr. Bennett, I expect full documentation when we resume. As the judge stood and left the room, Marcus exhaled sharply. Stephanie turned on him the moment the door shut. You said she didn't know. Denise stood slowly, gathering her folder. He underestimates people. It's what he does best. She slid the folder into her bag, glanced once at Stephanie, and smiled softly. Enjoy your break. Then she turned and walked out, leaving Marcus pale and silent, and Stephanie staring after her like she'd just seen a ghost. Denise stood by the courthouse window, staring down at the city below. Cars passed, people hurried. The world kept moving, completely unaware that her life was collapsing in real time. Her hands trembled as she tried to open her water bottle. She hadn't eaten since morning. Her throat felt dry, but her chest felt heavier than ever. She'd told herself she wouldn't cry, not here, not in front of him. But the minute she saw Marcus sitting beside that woman, so proud, so smug, her heart cracked open like glass. Stephanie wasn't just a name she found on receipts or social media anymore. She was flesh and blood sitting across from her, wearing the same necklace Marcus once swore he'd save up for, touching the same man who used to whisper promises about forever. Denise pressed her hand to her chest. The air felt too thin. She had loved Marcus for 12 years, not passively, but fiercely. She had believed in him when no one else did. She paid bills when his business faltered, defended him when people called him reckless. She watched him grow, and she was proud, until the day she realized she'd built an empire that didn't have room for her anymore. He suddenly had a problem with her skin color, her job, and everything she did. Her phone buzzed a message from an old friend. "You okay? I saw your name on the docket today." She stared at the text, thumb hovering over the keyboard, then typed, "I will be." She looked at her reflection in the glass-tired eyes, a woman who looked older than she remembered. But underneath that exhaustion, something else was taking shape. Resolve. The door opened behind her. Marcus walked in, his voice low and irritated. "You didn't have to pull. In that stunt in there." Denise didn't turn around. "You mean the truth?" he scoffed. "You're making yourself look desperate. You disgust me." She turned slowly, meeting his eyes. "Desperate as taking a loan behind my back and forging my name on the papers." Marcus froze, but she didn't stop. "Desperate is moving money out of our joint account while pretending we were still paying bills together. You want to talk about desperate, Marcus? Let's start there." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think anyone's going to believe you? You don't have proof." Denise smiled faintly. "Maybe not before today." Stephanie entered just then, heels clicking sharply. She stopped when she saw them standing face to face. "Are we seriously doing this here?" she said, rolling her eyes. Marcus straightened quickly, his tone switching. "We're just finishing up, babe." The word babe cut deeper than she expected. Denise swallowed hard, turning away. Stephanie smirked. "You know, Denise, it's probably better this way. You can focus on whatever you do. Teaching, right?" Denise nodded once. "Yes, I teach. And apparently, I also build businesses for men who forget where they came from." Stephanie's jaw twitched. But before she could reply, the courtroom assistant appeared again. "The judge will see you now." Denise took one last breath, straightened her blouse, and walked back in first. The air was colder this time, quieter, heavier. They sat back at the table. Marcus reached for his pen again, pretending control he no longer had. The judge entered and took his seat. "All right, let's continue." Denise clasped her hands together. Her fingers felt numb, but her mind was sharper than it had been in months. The judge turned to Marcus. "Mr. Bennett, have you provided the documentation?" Marcus nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor." He slid a stack of papers forward. The judge scanned them, frowning. "Where's the record for the home equity line?" Marcus hesitated. "It's attached." Denise watched the judge flip through the pages, stopping when he found the signature line. "Mrs. Bennett," the judge said, adjusting his glasses. "Is this your signature?" Denise leaned forward, her voice steady. "No, Your Honor. It's a copy of my signature, but I never signed that document." Stephanie glanced nervously at Marcus. He didn't look at her. The judge's tone hardened. "Mr. Bennett, are you aware that forgery is a criminal offense?" Marcus forced a smile. "Of course, Your Honor. It's just a mix-up. My wife must have forgotten that she signed it." "I didn't forget signing anything," Denise said softly. "Especially not $200,000 worth." The silence that followed was suffocating. Stephanie shifted, whispering, "Marcus, what is he talking about?" "Quiet," he hissed. Denise stared straight ahead. Her heart ached, but her face stayed calm. She'd learned long ago that silence unnerved Marcus more than shouting ever could. The judge made a note on his pad. "We'll investigate this document further. In the meantime, I suggest full transparency, Mr. Bennett." Hidden accounts or forged signatures could drastically affect your settlement outcome. Marcus nodded quickly, but Denise saw the sweat gathering at his temple. The judge turned to her. "Mrs. Bennett, is there anything further you wish to submit?" Her hand hesitated over her folder, not because she was unsure, but because she wanted him to feel the weight of waiting. "Yes," she said finally. "I have a few additional statements." She slid a smaller folder across the table. Marcus's eyes followed it like prey watching a predator move closer. "These are joint account withdrawals made over the last year," she said, her tone quiet but unwavering. "Payments totaling more than $180,000, none of which I authorized." Marcus swallowed hard. Stephanie turned toward him, pale. "Marcus?" He stared straight ahead. "Business expenses." Denise's voice cut through the air. "There's a receipt in there for a vacation to Turks and Caicos, a jewelry purchase, and the rent for an apartment under Stephanie Crawford's name." The judge's pen froze mid-stroke. Stephanie's mouth opened, then closed again. That's not..." Denise's gaze never moved from Marcus. "You told me you were working weekends. While I was grading papers and making dinners for one, you were wiring money to fund your new life." Her voice trembled. Just once, and that single crack was worse than any scream. Marcus shifted, trying to recover. "Your Honor, these accusations are irrelevant. They're financial records," Denise said. "That makes them very relevant." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. We'll take another short recess." When he stood, Marcus finally turned to her, voice low and vicious. "You think you're smart? You just embarrassed yourself in front of everyone." Denise met his gaze calm, unflinching. "No, Marcus. I reminded you who you married." She stood, gathering her notes again. Stephanie sat frozen beside him, staring down at the receipts with her name on them. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Denise walked out quietly, leaving Marcus slumped in his chair, and for the first time, he realized she wasn't bluffing. Denise walked out into the hallway again, her heels echoing against the polished floor. Her hands were trembling, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline. For the first time in months, she felt her power returning one slow heartbeat at a time. Behind her, the door opened. She didn't need to look to know it was Marcus. His cologne reached her first, the one she'd bought him for their anniversary, now mixed with the faint scent of Stephanie's perfume. "Denise?" he called softly, like saying her name would undo what just happened. She turned, arms folded. "You should go back in there. You have a lot to explain." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You've made your point. But this..." He gestured toward the courtroom. "This isn't helping anyone. We could have handled this privately." "Privately?" she repeated, her voice brittle. "You forged my name, drained our savings, and cheated in our bed. And you want privacy?" He stepped closer. "You're angry, I get it. But think about what you're doing. You want to destroy me?" Denise's lips curved, just slightly. "No. I want to destroy what you pretend to be." The door opened again. Stephanie stepped out, her face pale, voice unsteady. "Marcus, what the hell was that? You told me you owned the company outright. You said she signed off." He turned toward her, his patience thinning. "Not now." But Stephanie wasn't backing down. "You said I didn't have to worry, that everything was handled." She pointed back at the courtroom. "That woman just showed the judge my name on your secret expenses." Denise watched them unravel. Every lie Marcus had told was collapsing under its own weight. "You lied to me," Stephanie said, her voice cracking. "You made me believe." "Stop talking," Marcus snapped, his voice low but sharp. Denise smiled faintly. "Don't worry, Stephanie. He does that to everyone who stops believing his version of reality." The mistress glared at her. "Don't act like you're innocent. You must have driven him to it." Denise's eyes softened. Not with pity, with clarity. Maybe I did. Maybe I believed in him so much he thought he could do anything and I'd still forgive him. She turned to Marcus. You were my husband, Marcus. You didn't just cheat. You gambled away everything we built, and you thought I wouldn't find out. The bailiff's voice echoed down the hall. Court's back in session! Denise took a slow breath and walked back inside first, head high. Marcus followed a few paces behind, dragging Stephanie by the hand. She looked small now, fragile, unsure. The confidence she'd worn earlier had slipped away. When they sat back down, the judge was already waiting. He didn't look pleased. Mr. Bennett, he began, tone clipped. I've reviewed the additional financial records Mrs. Bennett provided. They raise serious concerns about transparency and fraud. Marcus tried to interrupt, but the judge held up a hand. Don't. I'm speaking. The courtroom fell silent. I've also reviewed your business holdings, the judge continued. Several of your company accounts were funded by the marital estate. That means Mrs. Bennett is entitled to a portion, potentially a controlling interest. Marcus's head snapped up. What? No, that's not. Don't argue with me, sir, the judge cut in. The law is clear. Denise sat still, her expression unreadable. Inside, her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She hadn't expected the judge to say that, but it was exactly what she'd hoped for. Marcus turned to her, whispering furiously, You wouldn't dare touch my business. She looked at him calmly. It was never your business. I mortgaged my parents' house for your startup, remember? I paid off your debts when you couldn't. The judge looked between them. Is that true, Mrs. Bennett? Yes, Your Honor, she said quietly. I have the loan statements in my file, Marcus groaned, rubbing his temples. You're unbelievable, Stephanie whispered. Marcus, what's happening? What does this mean? It means, Denise said softly, that every lie you helped him tell now belongs to me. The judge cleared his throat. Here's what's going to happen. Given the evidence, Mrs. Bennett will retain ownership of the primary residence, the shared investment account, and a 51% stake in Bennett Logistics. Mr. Bennett, you'll be required to disclose all remaining assets within 30 days. Marcus stood abruptly. This is insane! She's manipulating you. Sit down, Mr. Bennett, the judge said sternly. And watch your tone. Denise didn't move. She sat perfectly still, letting the words sink into the room like slow thunder. When the gavel hit, Marcus sank back into his chair, pale and sweating. Stephanie looked at him in disbelief. 51%? She owns it now? Denise turned to her. Funny how quickly things change when the truth shows up. The judge stood. Court adjourned. Marcus shot to his feet again. You think this is over? You just ruined everything we built! Denise sat still for a moment. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just exhaled a long, trembling breath that carried 12 years of betrayal out of her chest. Across the table, Marcus looked smaller than she'd ever seen him, and Stephanie's hand slowly slipped away from his. Denise stood, gathered her papers, and said quietly, You both taught me something. People who break others to feel powerful always end up powerless. Then she headied out head high, heels steady, and heart lighter than it had been in years. Denise, wait. She paused. He took a step forward. We can fix this. I made mistakes. But you and I, we had something. I can make it right. She turned halfway, her eyes meeting his. You can't fix what you broke by choice. He swallowed hard. You're not like this. You don't want to hurt people. Her expression softened, but only for a heartbeat. You're right, I don't. But I'm done letting people hurt me and calling it love. She walked out. The doors shut behind her with a heavy thud that echoed through the hallway. This isn't my usual story, but sometimes life teaches lessons louder than fiction. Not every heartbreak ends in pain. Some end in power. And if you've ever been underestimated, remember, revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just signs the right papers. If you felt that, hit the like button. It helps more people find stories like this. Subscribe because I'll be sharing more tales that remind us life has many sides. Some cruel, some beautiful, all real. This is the Story Den, and sometimes the best endings aren't happy. They're just deserved.